Okay, so I'm going to promptly get started here. Welcome to Optimizing Your Social Media, Understanding AI-Driven Algorithms and Best Practices. I'm Caitlin, Director of Client Services at Catava Marketing. Joining me today is my colleague and our Senior Marketing Strategist, Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Excited to chat today.
So today we're going to discuss ranking on Facebook and Instagram, the challenges we see with AI-driven algorithms, best practices, and what to avoid. We'll have a question and answer session at the end of our presentation, so please hold your questions until then. So just very quickly, a little bit about us. Catava Marketing has been providing full service marketing to our clients for over 20 years. Melissa, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Catava Plus?
Sure. So in 2025, we are launching a product called Catava Plus, which is a subscription-based software for small businesses to analyze and strategize their marketing and execution tools and templates and a whole knowledge base worth of materials to help you really re-jump your marketing in 2025.
Thank you. Okay, so jumping into it, Facebook and Instagram use AI-driven algorithms to help them rank content and predict what content might be most relevant to you. They refer to these as AI systems. There are 22 AI systems, 14 for Facebook and 8 for Instagram. We won't review all of them today, but we will cover Facebook and Instagram feed and Reels, and we'll also cover Instagram stories. So Facebook and Instagram feed and Reels have relatively the same 4-step system, which starts with step 1, which is inventory, that gathers all of the potential content that you might be interested in, including content from people or accounts you follow and accounts similar to those that you followed or engaged with. The second step is signals. So thousands of signals are considered for each post and reel. These include things like user interactions, connections, and inferred actions. Signals segue us into step 3, predictions, because signals help Facebook and Instagram make predictions about the types of content you might want to see. In the upcoming slides, we'll focus on the key signals that are considered for feed, reels, and stories. And then finally, step 4, ranking posts by score. So a relevance score is calculated for each post and reel, determining its position in the feed while trying to maintain a balanced mix of content types. So the key signals that influence the Facebook and Instagram feed are your activity. So post engagement, how often you like, comment, share, and spend time on posts. Content types, so the kinds of posts you interact with most, if you interact with video more or photo more. And then your scrolling habits, so how quickly you scroll past certain posts. Your friends' activity, so your friends' interactions, how often you engage with posts from specific friends, popularity with friends, how much your friends interact with the similar content. Your history, so in the past, what have you clicked on, what have you watched, and what have you skipped. The time spent, so how long you've spent on different types of content, and then where the post appears in your feed. And then finally, post characteristics. So posts with more comments might be ranked higher, and how often you click on the links with internal websites, or to external websites, sorry. So then taking a look at the Facebook Reel key signals, these are watch history, so how often you watch Reels, especially in full screen mode, the types of Reels you watch most, which creators' Reels you watch consistently, how long you watch each Reel, especially if you watch it for more than 10 seconds or to completion. Your interactions, so which reels you like, the topics of those reels, and how often you share reels, particularly to the other Meta social media platform, WhatsApp. Reel popularity, how many times a reel has been viewed by others, how many times a reel has been viewed for less than 3 seconds, which may actually negatively impact the ranking. Creator engagement, how likely you are to follow the creator based on your past interactions with their reels, and how likely you are to visit the creator's profile. Finally, video characteristics, the length of the reel. Shorter reels may be favored for quick consumption, and how old the reel is. So newer reels might be prioritized, and how many times the full video has been watched. So Instagram key signals are pretty similar to Facebook's. There are some differences though, and these include how you interact with Reels in Explore, which is a feature that is unique to Instagram, and how often you click the use audio on the reel itself. So the story key signals include your activity, how likely you are to tap on the story, to like the story, and to send a message or reply to the story. Your viewing habits, so the time spent watching stories overall, how quickly you swipe to the next story, and then finally, author connection, how close you are to the author. Are they a family or friend? How often you interact with their stories and posts. So it's important to point out that stories were created to connect users to people they know in real life. So if you want to reach more people outside of your following, it's actually better to post to your feed than it is to stories. So you might be wondering if Facebook and Instagram are looking at all of these different signals to help prioritize your content. Why do you sometimes, or maybe even oftentimes, see content that's irrelevant to you? First, it's important to note that you can adjust certain settings to help Facebook and Instagram make better predictions, but sometimes AI still gets it wrong. So some of those reasons include there just isn't enough data about your interests, accidental interactions. So for example, maybe you liked a post you didn't want to, or you followed a page that you didn't mean to. Overly broad interests, if you are interested in pets and astrology and plumbing, AI might have a hard time pinpointing the content that you want to see most. Mismatched hashtags. So make sure that if you're using hashtags that you're researching what types of content is actually coming up for those hashtags, because it might have nothing to do with, what you're sharing. Other things are changes in your friends or your interests, exploratory behavior, inconsistent engagement. So you took a break from social media for a few months, that could impact what you see. And then just simply plain old errors in processing the data. I think that this is a good place to mention kind of how the algorithm has also changed. So Melissa, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So when you think back to early Facebook and Instagram in like 2009, 2010, you really notice a big difference between the content that you see on your pages now. It started as a true social media platform where people just connected with their own personal network of people they knew in their personal lives in an online space. Um, and that all really changed in 2022 when Facebook and Instagram decided to change their algorithm from that personal connection based content where they would prioritize content from the people in your friends list that you interact with the most to this AI driven algorithm type of feed where they are really calculating exactly and precisely how people are using the different features and what type of content they're spending the most time on to improve their overall experience and expand the amount of content and the types of content and the people that are using these social networks. on an individualized level. And that is why, when we start talking about best practices and things like that, it really comes down to the changes in how people are just using social media overall, and why we're going to, suggest different types of best practices and strategies and trends in a few slides.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, that's a perfect segue into the next slide here. So, like Melissa said, we're going to review some best practices, but it's important to understand this statement first. The purpose of social media is to connect with people, share information, and facilitate communication. So with that said, we have some tips for engaging with your audience first. So foster conversation and build relationships by responding to comments on your posts and liking and replying to comments on other creators' posts. Using direct messages to build relationships is also favored by the algorithm. One example of engaging your audience could be to use an Instagram feature called broadcast channels. The screenshot we have here shows one creator using a post to engage or a poll to engage their audience via their broadcast channel. Also, it's important to use all the Instagram and Facebook features, for example, stories, lives. The live particularly encourages real-time engagement. You can incentivize engagement and attract new followers by hosting giveaways or contests, but be careful not to do it in a way that could be considered engagement bait. Focus on creating a genuine call to action that ensures meaningful participation, like asking thoughtful questions or requiring creative submissions. And then finally, collaborate with influencers or other accounts to reach people outside of your followers. So Melissa, why don't you talk a little bit about having a strong content strategy and what's involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So as everyone knows, it is really hard to keep up with the latest social media trends and all of the new features. What's the next big platform? And what you really need to reset your mind about is platforms are going to come and go, features are going to change or update, but the need for strong content that is relevant to your target audience is going to remain the same no matter how social media as a whole is going to change. And that is why you have to focus on the type of content that you're pushing out. And to be able to do that, you have to first know your audience and understanding their interests, their needs, and their preferences. And to reach that audience on those platforms, you have to use relevant hashtags, anything from broad all the way to niche specific hashtags. It's good to have a good mix of those so that you do kind of get that general audience and that growth, but you're also connecting with a very, very specific audience at the same time who might be very, very interested on one particular product or service that you offer. The third thing is to always have engaging captions, especially with platforms like Instagram. They're very visual heavy, so you don't want to have paragraph long captions and things like that. But instead, you want it to be informative yet entertaining, thought-provoking, but also action-driven, so that people truly understand the purpose of the content that you're pushing out and what their next step should really be in that consumer journey. And lastly, in order to have a very strong content strategy, it's all about consistency. If you spend 2 weeks going really, really hard, pushing story after story and post after post, and then nothing after that, your your audience is going to be lost. Your audience is not going to be consistently thinking about you and keeping you top of mind, because you are obviously not the only brand that is trying to reach them in their feed. And that's why consistently being there across all of the different features, trying out all of the different features, and having different messaging across all of those different features creates a unified, seamless experience where you will always stay top of mind. Um, you also want to make sure that you have high quality visuals. Like I said before, your feed is going to be flooded and you're going to have a lot of competition. So making sure that your visuals stand out from your competition is really important, and making sure that you have a whole combination that is really truly trying to reach your audience across the different platforms and features. So making sure you have really high quality stories, making sure you're using carousels, videos and reels to make sure that you're creating that top of mind seamless experience, and making sure that you have a balance of promotional, educational, and entertaining content. You don't want to just constantly shove a short-term limited time promotion over and over and over again. You're going to have a brand burnout at that point. So you want to make sure that you are still engaging with your community while also throwing sales content in there as well.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, so next we're going to talk a little bit about how to organically expand your reach. But Melissa, can you first, before I talk about some of those points, can you talk about how search behavior has changed?
Sure. So because the social media platforms all switch to an AI-driven algorithm that's based off of activity, social media has become a search platform, just like Google. They might be at a different phase of the customer journey when using social media versus using Google, but they are using social media to search for products and interests, all the same as they are with Google. And that is why you have to have that mix of not just sales material, but that's why you have to be educational and entertaining. And you really want to add value to every single post that you are putting out there, because that's the type of content that people are searching for, and using social media to gain knowledge or gain information about your services, or looking for reviews about your product as well. So that's why it's important to have like a big mix of that educational stuff in addition to just sales.
Yeah, thank you. With that said, some of the key factors to consider when trying to organically expand your reach, one of them is to do your keyword research and incorporate relevant keywords in your captions, and to use hashtags, kind of like how we mentioned before. But again, it's important to search for the hashtags to see what types of content comes up, to see if it makes sense for you to even use them in the first place. And then time optimization, so posting when your audience is most active. Engage your audience by asking questions, requesting feedback, or sparking discussions. And then, what's become very important most recently is making sure that your content is accessible by adding captions to video and adding alt text to images. Not only does this help with organic reach, but it provides a better experience for a wider audience. And then just a couple others, location tagging. So you can geotag content to reach local audiences, and then also tag relevant accounts, or use the Instagram Collaborate feature to reach other creators' audiences. So best practices and ranking aside, if you aren't analyzing how your content is performing, you won't be able to adjust your strategy going forward. What works for one creator and their audience may not work for yours. So digging into the data using Facebook and Instagram's built-in insights is key. Here you can monitor engagement, identify top performing content, and adjust your strategy accordingly. So a couple of things to avoid are posting too often. Kind of going along with that is spammy content such as repetitive posts or using low quality images and low quality video, using too many hashtags. At one point it was suggested that you use 30 hashtags. That is, the opposite of what it is now. Now it's you only want to use relevant hashtags, if any, and avoid engagement bait. At one point, it was also recommended to tell people, to like and share your content, but now that can be viewed as inauthentic, so it's no longer recommended. And then just a couple of specific best practices for Facebook. Focus on meaningful interactions, use Facebook groups for niche audiences, share user-generated content like testimonials and images from your customers using their product or your services, obviously as long as you have their permission to do so, and utilize long-form content formats. And then a couple specific to Instagram are don't use watermarks or logos, add audio, not just to video, but also to photos and carousels, cross-promote content across features. So for example, sharing a link to your most recent post in your story. Make sure your videos are 3 minutes or less. Utilize interactive elements like polls and quizzes. Use Instagram editing tools. Post exclusive and original content, and then check your account status in your profile settings to confirm that you're in good standing, because if you're not and something needs to be addressed, then you do not have the chance of reaching new people with your content. So that brings us really to the end of our presentation. Here is where you can ask us questions. So in order to do that, there is like a little activities button at the bottom right of the screen with like a triangle, circle, and a square, and you can click that and you can click Q&A, and that is where you can type in your questions. So we do have a question already. It says, does video or photo perform better on Instagram? So I would say it's likely that video is prioritized, especially on Instagram. Since for a while, they were really promoting Reels, so that was getting prioritized. But I do think it also depends on your audience and what they favor, and also the user individually, because if a user interacts more with photo than they do video, then for them, they would be served photo more often. So it really depends. Melissa, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say in general, the trend across all age groups tends to be that everybody's attention span is much smaller than it used to be, and video tends to grab their attention quicker than reading words would be. And it also helps people retain information better. However, I would say for heavier topics or things that might take a little bit more explaining, you might want to consider, mixing in still those graphics and things like that where people can save them and reference them again later.
Good point. Thank you. A couple other questions that we have are, how popular is Facebook still? Melissa, why don't you take this one and maybe talk a little bit about the recent changes that Facebook made that I think is, causing some uproar?
I think a lot of people ask this question because the younger generation is not joining and using Facebook the same way that some of the older generations are still using it.
Mhm.
However, Facebook is alive and well. They are still the #1 global social media platform. They have the most monthly active users than any other platform out there, and they are still should still be a top priority for businesses across all different industries and of all different sizes. And regardless of some of these feature changes or some of their policy changes, as of right now, it's still important to use, and it's just a matter of understanding the demographics that are on there. If you are trying to target, or if you have campaigns that are targeting younger generations, then you don't have to prioritize Facebook, but it doesn't mean that you can't ignore it either.
Yep. Good point. And then lastly, it looks like we have how often should I be posting on social media? So, this really kind of depends on how often you are able to post and what, when your audience is on and what they're expecting from you. So if you decide, I'm going to post once a week, and that's what your audience expects, then that's what you should remain consistent with. But if you go from posting once a week to posting every day, your audience is not expecting that from you because that's not what they're used to. So it could, it could cause some fatigue amongst them. Melissa, do you have anything to add to this one?
I would say this is why it's important to, do what we call A/B testing.
Mm.
And it's really, unfortunately, there's no exact science to it, and it's kind of a learning curve for every business. And that's why you should post, try posting a lot and see, within those back end analytics, like which posts on which days and which times seemed to have gotten a better, reach than others. And it's really all up to analyzing that analytics regularly with every single post that you put out, and determining the trend on what's working and what's not. And that is when you're going to figure out how often and when you should post on social media.
Good point. Instagram also has a newer feature called Trial Reels, where you can test out how often you post or new reel content in general to an audience outside of your own. So that's something too that could be tested there. So I think that brings us our whole presentation to an end. There aren't any more questions. So Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.